So you might remember a few days ago on the channel, we had a discussion around Nintendo Switch 2 supporting some kind of enhanced backwards compatibility for Switch 1 games, meaning not only will your Switch 1 library work on Switch 2 like we already know to expect, but there might actually be some performance benefits, such as games that used to run at 30 frames per second on the Switch might run at 60 on the new console. Maybe in some cases we could even expect to see things like a 4K resolution with DLSS upscaling when in docked play. These are all possibilities, and the last source we mentioned was none other than Nashweedle, a known leaker, who put out the claim that developers and publishers will have the option to enhance their games or not, and they will also have the option to charge for it or not. In fact, the post that we read stated that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot would have an upgrade available for a fee, but whereas No Man's Sky would be updated to run more effectively and take advantage of the new hardware for free. Well, now there are a couple new data points around this, because not only has Nashweedle responded to some questions in that post outlining a few other games he's heard of that will indeed receive this upgraded support, but also we have a totally separate and unrelated source in that of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition and a 60 frames per second mode that has been uncovered in the game's code. And while it's not 100% verification that this was intended for a Switch 2 version or something that the Switch 2 will be able to unlock via a performance patch once we have that console launch, it is interesting when we look at this data alongside some data that you might have forgotten about, where 4K resolution support in game code has been spotted in the past. So I want to break all of this down in today's video and get on the same page with just how likely enhanced backwards compatibility is for Nintendo Switch 2. But before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by outlining the updated claims from Nashweedle, because as mentioned, we talked about No Man's Sky and Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but further down the post they have news. It seems that Dragon Ball Kakarot will not only be coming to Switch 2 with an upgrade, but will also be coming with a new edition. Actually, that's the same as paying for an upgrade. We'll see if they clarify. And my understanding of this particular post is that he's saying there will be a Switch 2 version of this game, but this is literally the exact conversation we had, where we see companies like Sony, where when they update a game from the prior generation and put some work into it, not just maybe a quicker frame rate, but actually reworking the textures and really making it a noticeable leap forward in technology, like Last of Us Part 1 or 2, or Horizon Zero Dawn most recently, they give people who have that game in their library the option to pay $10 to take advantage of the newer version of the game without having to repurchase and re-buy the entire game. And while Nashweedle did call out some third-party games here, it is pretty clear that he does not know, because he's even asking in his original post, how will Nintendo handle this? Well, in the case of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, it sounds like we will get a Switch 2 version, probably sold for a $60 or $70 full retail cost, in terms of it being available on a store shelf with a Switch 2 retail case and just a brand new eShop download at that full retail price. But if you own this game for Nintendo Switch right now, you may indeed have some kind of upgrade patch available through the eShop that you can purchase for something like $10 or $15. And when it comes to first-party Nintendo games, will they do that same thing, or will they offer it as something like a benefit for Nintendo Switch Online? All of these are possibilities, but continuing on with the Nashweedle updates first, you do also have somebody directly asking them, do you know if Doom Eternal or Outer Worlds have updates? Another one that would be great for you is Sifu, and their exact reply to that is Doom Eternal, yes, and it seems it will be free. Now, Doom being brought into this is actually an interesting one, because Microsoft, who owns Bethesda now, and we have some rumors about Doom the Dark Ages maybe even being a launch title for Nintendo Switch 2. There's some history here though, but Microsoft, how they handle backwards compatibility is actually probably the most consumer friendly and honestly the industry standard. Like, while I'm not all in on Microsoft on everything, and I really play on my Xbox the least out of every console I own, I will give them credit where credit's due, and how they handle backwards compatibility is one of those things. You can just straight up pop in a physical disc of an Xbox or Xbox 360 game to your Series X, and if it is supported, it's a limited library. You're going to be able to download that game from the Microsoft Store, still be able to play it because you own the disc, and it will apply a number of different updates and patches to make the game run and look that much better. 60 FPS in a lot of cases is just a given for anything that's prior gen with Xbox backwards compatibility. And honestly, it's funny because when you see some of the more recent collections that have been released, like Sonic Generations, for example, with Shadow Generations, of course, being the new content, it wasn't as much of an upgrade if you owned that game on the 360 and had it playable via backwards compatibility. Like if you look at it side by side, it wasn't as noticeable of a jump for this remaster edition because Xbox was already doing this stuff on the sidelines, just basically saying, if you own our games and you stuck with us through all these generations, we're going to make them easily accessible, at least the ones that we can for licensing reasons and things, and update them and give them better frame rates and resolutions and all of that. That's what we would hope for in a perfect world, that it's just an extra benefit that Nintendo chooses to provide. But how likely is it for this technology to actually be there if you don't want to buy into any of the Nash Weedles of the world with their leaks around this? Well, that's where game code actually comes into this conversation, because a major first-party release from Nintendo, their only March game for the Nintendo Switch, and really the game that actually finishes out the rest of their release calendar, because we don't know very much at all until April 2nd. This game, of course, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, that is, leaked out early. Data miners do their thing. It's now out and available. Hopefully you're enjoying it this weekend. I have not picked up my copy yet. I do intend to at some point and start up my Xenoblade Chronicles X adventure for the first time, because I'm new to this series and I think I'm actually going to start with X and consider going through the other ones after that. But you can see this following article from My Nintendo News, which outlines Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition executable has hidden 60 FPS mode. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is finally available today, and data miners have been combing through the files checking to see what secrets are hidden within. One such person is data miner Masagrador Dev, who has discovered that the game's executable has a hidden 60 FPS mode. However, once it is enabled, it is clear that it is unfinished, as Masagrador says on X that it seems to be implemented only partially, since enabling it causes weird issues. Perhaps the mode lays the groundwork for enhancements if you play the acclaimed JRPG on Nintendo Switch 2, which is due out later this year. And you then have the exact tweet in question, which says, about Xenoblade Chronicles X, dynamic resolution ranges from 504p to 720p handheld and 760p to 1080p docked. Game's executable has a hidden 60 FPS mode. It seems to be implemented only partially, since enabling it causes weird issues. As a proof, screen from function that sets UI speed at 1.0.1. And I would like to also then go back in time a little bit and remind you guys of a totally separate game that we talked about this idea back in May of 2024, where you can see the following headline from WCCF Tech, which says Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Remake includes 4K performance profile, possibly for the Nintendo Switch 2. So this is something that has clearly been brought up and wanted by fans for quite some time now, the idea of enhanced backwards compatibility, especially when you stop and think about how rich of the library of games that Nintendo Switch 1, the current generation of Switches, now has. That's literally something you want to potentially run way better on your next gen hardware, especially considering that we've seen a lot of games with performance issues, and when these type of things are hidden in the code, that is yet more evidence that this is on the table. It's not confirmation, and you shouldn't set all your hopes, dreams, and expectations on this happening at a broad scale for Nintendo first-party titles, but it is interesting that, especially towards the latter end life cycle of the Switch, that we have a lot of these games that just mysteriously have user profiles or straight up development code that allows them to run at higher frame rates and higher resolutions than the current console even supports. And if you really want to be skeptical about it, obviously testing and things happen in a development environment, and not everything that is in the code is utilized. And there's plenty of things that could lead to just, it was the developers testing a 60 FPS mode. It didn't work out. They pulled back on it. That's definitely a fair mindset to have, but it is interesting that it's continued to pop up time and time again. We know Nintendo is making a big feature that they are calling out and marketing ahead of time on the Nintendo Switch 2, backwards compatibility. Like, that's actually something that they confirmed to us before we even saw the first look trailer. Then it was highlighted again within the first look trailer. I think that there is a reason to believe that Nintendo will want to tell you, so their games continue to sell better and they're more evergreen than ever. With the software success they've seen of the Switch 1, I think they will want to tell you your Switch 1 library at a large level will be upgradable when played on Switch 2, giving yet another reason for those 150 million Switch units that are sitting out there today. The users that are maybe thinking, well, there's not a ton of Switch 2 games right now, I'll wait on getting this console, but they're still enjoying their Switch 1 now. If you knew that your games were going to be upgraded to 4K 60 potentially when docked, that would be a reason to maybe consider going out and buying Nintendo's brand new piece of hardware sooner rather than later, and building out your Switch 1 library that much more, because now any of those performance concerns you had from reviews of Switch 1 games that you've seen over all the years, well, now you know it's not going to be a problem so much with Switch 2. So I think it's a genius idea. The question remains on if Nintendo will implement it at a large scale and how they will implement it, because is it just something like a lot of these games get some kind of base performance boost where they go from 30 to 60 and they go to a higher 1440p or 4K resolution, and you really don't have to pay for that, it's included? That's possible. Then we also have the maybe more one-off enhanced remaster projects like the internal code name that we know Nintendo has, which is U-King-O, which is the code name for Breath of the Wild, but with a -O on the end of it, O meaning ounce. Ounce is the code name for Switch 2. Then it lines up with all the reports of 2023 that there is a 4K 60 version of Breath of the Wild with no load times running at Gamescom 2023 on targeted spec PC hardware. It seems like a lot of different things are pointing us in this direction to believe that Nintendo's going to do bigger scale work on certain games, and hopefully just a bare minimum performance patch to take advantage of the more powerful hardware for their other first-party library of software for Switch 1. And it might be advantageous for them to do that because, again, that's going to help them sell more games over the course of time as evergreen software. But let me know what you think about all this in the comments down below. Are you more in the mindset that we're going to see enhanced backwards compatibility, or is Nintendo going to Nintendo this thing, and even though they have a way more powerful console, they're not going to acknowledge or even look at ideas like backwards compatibility with upgraded performance? But make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.